Hey lads, another commentary video. This time we are in Ruby Life Pools, which is one of the harder dungeons, I would assume. So let's go through that from the Resto Shaman point of view. And this is going to be a +20 Fortified run with Explosive, which is going to make some of the pools a little bit different, but I'll try to talk to everything as we go through the dungeon. Now, this big guy in the beginning, some people might actually skip it, but we pulled it. It's not big of a deal. You have to constantly watch your feet here because he does this thing on the ground that's going to AoE you, and it's basically a very, very scary thing. We, of course, pull it into the next pack, and the mob to watch for here is the Earthshaper. The Earthshaper is going to make a Tectonic Slam cast, and this is a huge AoE that is going to hit everyone in your party. And on Fortified, it actually hits pretty hard. This is not interruptible, but you can stun the mob, or, in my case, I don't think I did it here, but you can also hex it. We run hex because of the Totemic Focus talent, so that is something that you can use to interrupt the Tectonic Slam. The Tectonic Slam itself, it's not going to one-shot your group, but, you know, if you interrupt it, it's less damage to heal through. Constantly watch your feet because there's a lot going on the ground. And then you have the rest of the mobs that are just casting the Ice Bolt and the shields. If you can spare, interrupt, and help your group with that, that's bonus basically, because the ice bolts will also do a little bit of damage. But again, the Earthshaper is the most important part here because you want to make sure there's less to heal, especially when you have to kill orbs into explosive weak. So basically the next few pools are going to be the same. There's Earthshapers, of course. Cap Totem is something that you can use to basically interrupt the Tectonic Slam, and then as often as you can interrupt the Ice Bolts. You have to spot heal people here because obviously Ice Bolts are going to go off, so people are going to take damage. You don't want to walk on the X at the side because you're going to spawn extra whelps, which also put a debuff to your tank. So just try to stay close to your group in the middle. Don't ninja pool the stuff on the left hand side on the screen right now, and keep watching the feed because there's still those small patches on the ground which are casted by the mobs, and I'm pretty sure they one-shot you pretty much. So try to constantly be alert on where you are standing. After this pool, so you can skip some trash here because obviously there's going to be a lot of trash count later on in the dungeon. You might invis, etc., right? We're pulling everything here. Usually the second big guy, these big guys, they're not very effective health-wise and percentage-wise, but since we only had 2 mobs, I guess the tank decided it's fine to actually pull it. This one you can just skip by pulling these mobs and then walking next to the wall on the right hand side. You don't have to pull the big guy, and you don't need invis. I ninja pulled here. That was pretty bad on my side because I avoided patch on the ground. I walked to the left too far, and I got 2 extra mobs. Luckily not fatal because the rest of the pack is already low, and I also run to the tank very quickly so he can grab aggro on those mobs. Obviously something that you don't want to do generally, right? Because that could wipe you. The Geocasters, they actually do this shield that you want to interrupt because otherwise you have to DPS through the shield that pops up. If you run Purge, which is actually very good for this dungeon, I will mention this later on as well, but if you run Purge, you can also purge that shield and don't have to deal with it. And of course, if you don't pull the extra mobs, it's much easier. Alright, so that's a bit of an extra trash count here, which, you know, it's not ideal, but we are going up next to the mini-boss next. So this mini-boss, you have to be careful and watch for your tank, because as soon as he does the Steel Barrage, there's 2 things that happen. So he's smacking your tank, putting a debuff on him, he takes extra damage, so if your tank is not careful, they can actually die, especially on 45 weeks, but at the same time, there's fire patches on the ground that you need to dodge. So basically, you have to heal your tank through the burst and move at the same time. Don't be afraid to pop your Spirit Walker's Grace here and heal while you're moving. In this case, the tank was pretty good, so I didn't have to heal him much, but I actually had tanks literally die on this mob if they're not popping defensives and paying attention. The other thing that he does after the Steel Barrage, he's going to target someone on your party and charge them. Make sure you're out of this line. On Fortified, it will probably one-shot you. Even if it doesn't one-shot you, it puts a debuff on you, which is sticking debuff, and you know, it's probably healable too, but don't put your healer into that situation. Just don't have the debuff, and you should be good to go. And that brings us to the first boss. The first boss, I wouldn't worry too much about. It's relatively easy boss, but you have to do the mechanics right, of course. And as long as you have a couple of cooldowns saved for the correct moments, you should be totally fine. So first, you kind of want to stack close to each other, so those hail bombs, the ice things on the ground, drop basically close to the same spot. After that, the boss is going to target someone with the Chill Storm, and that person needs to run away from the group, leave that patch on the ground, and you're going to get sucked in and take a little bit of damage. What I do here as a healer, make sure to cast a heal, a Riptide, on the person with the Chill Storm, because they'll take some damage. So at 2 places in the fight, the boss is going to do what just happened. So he's going to call a bunch of whelps, and he's going to put this huge shield on top of him. The important part here is burn through the shield, because as you saw, there was a cast going on, and your goal is basically to interrupt the cast as soon as possible, because this is what does the damage. The whelps are not that important as long as the tank grabs aggro. He has the stacking debuff, so you can dispel him every now and then, but he should be fine most of the time. So if you get the Chill Storm, which just happened, just use a speed boost, either a Gust of Wind or whatever else you have, to get out and away from it quickly, so you don't take extra damage, because that could heal you. So we are lusting this boss, so we are melting through him pretty quickly. As you can see, the second shield phase is here, so it's melting pretty quickly. Don't forget to interrupt at the end, because I had groups where we would burn through the shield and they would just let the boss cast, and you still have to heal, right? But the other thing is, as you can see, people are not taking that much damage outside of this this phase, so don't be afraid to pop any cooldown on that. Yes, people do take damage from the Chill Storm right now when it's sucking you in, and then this point here, when it blows up, it actually hits everybody up. But you're not in a hurry to heal everybody up after the Chill Bomb, right? Because there's nothing else that they'll take damage from. As you can see, the Hell Bombs don't take much damage, don't make much damage at all. So yeah, it's unpleasant. There's something to heal, but at the same time, as long as nobody dies from the burst, so this is the point where you actually want to top people off, then you have plenty of time to catch up. And that's it. So the boss does the special phase with the channel and the webs only 2 times, so you want to save cooldowns for that point, and the rest, as you can see, is just managing the Hell Bombs and then the Chill Storm, and you are good. So usually you want to drink here before you go up, because the trash that follows is basically, I wouldn't say the hardest. There's even harder trash at the end, but it's not easy. Let's put it this way, especially on a Fortified week. So when we go up, there's 2 dragons that are patrolling. And what is the accepted best route, let's put it this way, is go left here and kill the first dragon, and then you're going to be skipping the second dragon because you don't need the percentage, and it's much harder to kill anyway. So I'll go through the second dragon later on, but this one does a couple of things. So the first one is a frontal. As you can see, Storm Bread. What I like to do is run close to the dragon, so when he casts the bread, you don't have to run to the sides, or you can just run through the dragon and get there quickly. The second thing that he does is the jolting. I'll see what the cast is in just a second. This is just a tank buster, so be prepared to heal your tank a little bit. And then the third thing, Thunder Jolt, this is the tank buster. And then he's also going to cast 2 debuff, Rolling Thunders, on the 2 party members of your group. So the first thing to do is spread a little bit and dispel one of them, which is going to hit everybody for your party a little bit. And then try to top everybody off, because you won't be able to dispel the second one. I just won't have enough time for your ability to come back off from cooldown. It will expire on itself, but it is also going to hit everyone in the vicinity. So it's actually a lot of healing, especially on 45 weeks. So here I'm trying to heal the second person as quickly as possible. Luckily, that was the monk. He could diffuse magic, but you're not lucky most of the time. So there's a lot of healing to do on those points. So the trash that follows is basically a combination of, I think it's 3 different mobs. So the Chill Weavers, they do this Cinderbolt cast. If you can interrupt it, that's great, because it does hit people, it does chunk, so and it's something extra to heal through. We got Thundering here, which was very unfortunate. I tried to run to the warrior. He was not interested to run to me, though. And especially on these pools, I'll explain the next mob in just a second, but especially in these pools, you might want to clear Thundering a little bit early. For several reasons. So first, their mob was the big flame guy, the big Inferno guy, which does several things. So first, he's going to cast Inferno. The Inferno is not interruptible, stunnable, or avoidable in any case, and that's going to put a huge debuff on your group. It's going to AoE everyone down, and then put a dot on you. So you basically have to heal through that, right? You have to heal through that at all times. So that mob is actually, the Inferno is being cast right now. It goes off, everybody gets hit, and there's a 5-second debuff, right? So you have to be prepared for these casts, because there's a lot to heal through. The other thing that this guy does, as you saw, he put a bomb on me. And that bomb, you usually want to run on top of the rest of the mobs, because it interrupts them and it does a little bit of damage to them. But it is also a ticking dot. So be prepared to heal the person that has the bomb, because they'll take extra damage. And if it's you, and there's, let's say, the Inferno going on, you'll be taking a lot of damage. And also you'll be thrown in the air once the bomb expires. So for those moments, save your Spirit Walker's Grace, because you have to heal yourself basically while you are flying, right? It's very rough. You can be, if those mechanics overlap, you can be in a very tough spot. And then the last mobs are those Flame Dancers. Now, what they do is that Flame Dance, as you can see, the Flame Dance is not interruptible, but if that goes off, it's a huge AoE to your whole party. So, save a Cap Totem, and this is another great usage from the Hex. If you're running Hex, you can Hex and interrupt that. That's very important, because especially there's like this pool right now, we have a Flame Dancer and the Inferno. So if the Inferno goes off and then you let a Flame Dance cast fully, you're basically dead, right? There's no healing through that. As you can see, I'm running with the bomb to the mobs right now. The melee is getting away from me, so I can actually hit the Flame Dancer, and that's another way to interrupt it. And after the Flame Dancers die, they do this Blazing Glory Shield kind of thing. Actually, this Flame Dance actually went off, as I said. If that goes off, you're dead, right? We didn't interrupt. I think we were hoping to kill them up or something, or nobody was paying attention. Actually, my Hex was up, so I could have hexed, right? But usually there's so much to heal that it's hard trash, right? You have to pay attention to way too many things. Being thrown in the air, moving on the ground, flame dances, interrupts on the Cinderbolts. So you have to be very focused here, because it's basically all on you, right? Every mechanic has something to do with you, especially when you can interrupt the flame dance. And then, when the big Inferno dies, as you can see, it leaves that huge circle on the ground that basically you have to stay away from. The only advice that I can give you here is run to the direction where you're going to be moving next. Because if you run to the opposite direction to avoid the circle, you'll be left far behind. Your tank is going to pull the next group, and you have to run to them and probably drink. And yeah, so just try to run into the same direction. Now, the other dragon basically lands right where I'm right now on the map, and you want to skip that guy. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure the dragon is not there, and then we're going to run on top of this pack to make sure that we're not going to aggro the dragon. This is the same mobs, right? We have a Flame Dancer, we have Cinderbolts cast, and the Inferno. You have to heal through all of that and interrupt all of that. And when the Inferno dies here, make sure you're not running to the sides. I got the bump here again. Luckily, I'm topped off, so I don't need to pop Spirit Walker's Grace, which is on cooldown. But make sure to hit the mobs, because that's extra interrupts. And when the Inferno dies, I think I'm going to do that right now, but run basically not to the sides, but up and down As you can see, I'm trying to be away on the direction of this little platform so that I do not aggro the dragon that's flying around accidentally, right? So that's very, very important. If you aggro the dragon, that dragon does basically the fronto and nothing else until 50%. But after 50%, it has a stacking dot on you, which is basically going to chunk you down pretty quickly. If you don't have CDs, especially on Fortified, that's why you want to skip this guy. And he landed here. We're just going to wait. We don't care about this guy. The priest mind suits him, but I don't think it's safe to run around and just make sure you don't aggro it. You're going to save more time waiting because if you aggro it, first you might wipe, right? And then second, it will be more than a minute of a fight than the few seconds that we had to wait here. All right, and then last group here, actually there's a patrol as well behind it. As you can see, I am targeting the Flame Dancer. My DH pulled aggro here, which is unfortunate. But I'm targeting the Flame Dancer. I'm counting on my group to interrupt the Cinder Bolts, although if I can help with that, that's bonus, right? But I'm more scared of the Flame Dancer and the interrupts there. If you can time your Cap Totem, that's perfect, but then watch for that Hex as well. And I think there's 1 or 2 pools where you actually have 2 Flame Dancers, so you have to be very, very careful there because your party might not have enough interrupts for them. Okay, in this case we're fine, we have Ring of Peace, etc. But in general, the Flame Dancers are probably the scariest mobs here because they basically wipe you if their cast goes off. Everything else is also pretty bad because there's a lot to heal, but there's no one-shots as the Flame Dance going off. Alright, so don't be afraid to pop CDs here. The boss that follows is hard, but we got stunned here again with the Thundering. That was unfortunate because, as I said, try to clear early because the Inferno died, so there was a big fire circle on the ground, and I just couldn't run in because that would kill me, so I decided to stay out and die. But if we clear the Thundering early, there will be no issue. Alright, so after you kill all the Infernos and this circle place here, you're going to be pulling the boss, and the boss is going to be pulled and then kited to the left because that dragon is still on the right, you don't want to go there. Alright, let's go through the mechanics slowly. The first thing that she's going to do is the ritual of blazing something, and it's going to cast an Inferno on the ground. She starts with a pretty high energy, so this is actually the very first thing that she is going to do, and it always targets a player. So what you want to do is bait that Inferno a little bit to the side of the boss in the middle of the open area. That's totally fine. And then the fun part begins because all the other mechanics overlap. So the first thing that happens with the Inferno is it casts Inferno. And this is the same cast that we had on the trash before the boss. It's going to hit everyone, put a debuff on them, and you just have to heal through that. There's no avoiding it, and there's no dodging it. At the same time, the boss is casting Molten Boulder. This also targets a player and is going to fire a small ball on the ground that's going to roll towards that person. If you get hit, you're probably one-shot, right? You just have to dodge that. But the ball is also going to leave a patch of fire on the ground. So the important part here is first target that away from the Inferno so that melee can actually hit it, and then also target it possibly towards the back, towards the direction that you're not going to run to because you want to have clear space to drag the boss after you kill the ad. Over here, we're baiting this one to the side, and also keep in mind that if this ball hits something, it explodes, and you want to be out of this area. So don't bait it close to a wall or something, because otherwise that's going to be very, very nasty. What I didn't pay attention to was the Elemental, which also does the Blazing Cast, which is another AoE, but this one is interruptible, so make sure you're interrupting, right? There's plenty of damage going on, so you have to interrupt that Elemental, otherwise you're going to wipe, and of course you're a Shaman, so you can help with that. Alright, so after that, it basically repeats. So it's going to summon an Inferno, it's going to cast 2 boulders, and then summon another Inferno. So you have to be baiting the boulders to the side, not to the direction where you're going to be running. You have to be killing the ad as quickly as possible, and then, obviously, moving out of the big fire patch on the ground when the ad dies. Now, there is one more extra mechanic which happens after the ad is summoned. Let me see if this is actually going to happen here, and this is very, very important. So after the ad happens, the boss actually smacks your tank with a debuff that is called Searing Blows right now. So it's going to hit your tank 4 times, and it's going to leave a debuff for each hit that was successful on the tank. On Tyrannical, that could actually kill your tank. It's very nasty because it also happens close after the Inferno has been cast, so you have to heal everybody up. But in this case, actually, you can see my tank only has 2 stacks, but you can have up to 4. And unfortunately, as a Shaman, you have to just heal through that. If you're Evoker, you can use Causterizing Flames and actually dispel that, but we are a poor Shaman, so thank you, Blizzard, for another diversity thing that is basically going to make us not invited into those keys if they become high enough, and this is just not healable through, since Evoker simply just doesn't have to heal through it, right? Anyway, the advice that I can give you here is actually focus on your tank. Obviously, you need to cast a couple of heals to everybody else so they don't die from the dot, from the Inferno. But even if they're at low health, as long as they're not dead, you can just focus on the tank because they will not be taking damage until the next Inferno, which is, you know, very far from this point forward. This is also hugely a tank responsibility as well. If they're not using defensives, sometimes on Tyrannical keys, this is probably not healable through, especially if they get hit by all 4 of the Searing Blows. So yeah, a lot of mechanics. It could be a little overwhelming at the start, but once you get this dance, which is basically repeating, it's almost as it's scripted, and you don't bait like we just did in the middle of the area where we're going to be running through, you will be totally fine. If you have to run through the fire, make it quick, because it also does a stacking debuff on you, so you want to minimize that, but ideally, you won't be able, you won't have to do that at all. And if you repeat that enough times, and your tank doesn't die, and, you know, everything should be fine at the end. Of course, this is a fortified key, so it's not that hard. It's a little bit harder on Tyrannical, but it's almost a scripted fight, and if you do it correctly and your tank is using defensives on the Searing Blows, it should be totally fine. Alright, moving on to the next rush. There are a few interesting mobs here. So, the warriors just do AoE Stomp, which basically your melee should be careful not to get hit by. And then you see the Channeler mob, which does the Thundering Bolts. You want to interrupt those because there's pretty much nothing else to interrupt right here. And then he's going to do the Lightning Storm that he did just a moment ago. You have to be prepared for that. Like, as soon as you see him casting the Lightning Storm, you need to be pre-casting your heals, as I'm right now, because there's going to be a heavy damage going out to your party. And don't be afraid to use CDs here, because obviously that could wipe the whole party. Apart from the tank, and just be prepared, right? There's going to be a lot of that happening. There's a couple more of those mobs coming up, and there's going to be a lot of lightning storms that you need to survive. So because it's Fortified week and we have time, we're just pulling those 2 warriors alone, but sometimes they'll be just dragged into the next pack. And again, they could be scary for the melee, and the Thunderclap also hits your tank, right? So just be prepared to pump a little bit of healing if they all get hit. The next pack has the Flame Channeler. So this one is going to do the Flash Fire cast, which is going to target the person and put like a little bump around them. Ideally, you want to interrupt that because it will do AoE, and it's also going to hurt that person as well. As you saw, it was casted on me this time, and the fire circle was around me, but we interrupted, so it didn't go off. Obviously, you want to focus this guy first, and then cleave the Storm Warriors around it. And the next pack on the right is actually going to have a Channeler, I think, and a Stormcaller. So you're going to get both of the mechanics at the same time. Make sure you don't pull to the pack before the boss, because this one is even scarier. You might want to clear those elementals as well on the sides, because you don't want to aggro them during the boss, and you don't want to aggro them into the last pack, which I'll talk about in just a second. So there's 2 things to interrupt here. Definitely you don't want to pull this into a different Okay, so this was actually a mistake. We didn't want to pull the... I don't know actually how that pack, the second pack got pulled in. I'm popping everything I have, but we're not surviving this, right? So we have a Flame Channeler, and then a Stormcaller, and then I think there's another Flame Channeler, and the mini-boss before... the last boss. So there's just way too much going on. We're not able to interrupt something. The flash fires are going off. I'll explain the last mob in just a second. Another lightning storm, right? So maybe on a Tyrannica week, but you don't want to do that pool, definitely, unless you're in a very coordinated group. So the pool that we were supposed to do cleanly, you just have two interrupts, which is the Channeler and the Stormcaller, and you can just rotate your cooldowns through that. You can stun those mobs, but again, be prepared for the lightning storm, because this is going to happen, and obviously you need to be ready to heal through that. We're just typing in chat right now. We couldn't figure out what happened and who pulled. Somebody's just being silent, I guess, but doesn't really matter. Luckily, we had enough time in the timer. So there's one channeler left. I think we're going to solo kill it right now. Because we don't want to pull it to the last mini boss, and the last mini boss is actually relatively hard as well. So we're just going to smack it very quickly, and hopefully we're going to clear the sides as well. So let me talk about the next pool after that. So the mini boss, the Storm Warriors are just cleave targets, right? They'll do the Thundering Clap, but that's it. The mini boss has the Lightning Storm mechanic as well, which hits pretty hard, and you need to be ready for that. And it also has two more mechanics that you need to be aware of. So as we pull, he's going to start Shock Blasting, right? And this is going to put a debuff if it goes off on a person. He's going to take more damage, so basically you want to interrupt that. The Summon Portal actually summons a few of those little Primalist things that die very quickly. But after that, he casted that Tempest of Storms, which put a big shield around him. Now, this is very important because he absorbs the shield of the little clouds around him. So if you can purge those, then he's going to have a lesser shield. And if you don't burn through the shield, there's another Tempest of Storms. So he got all the shields from the little things around him, right? If you don't burn through the shield, he's going to wipe you, right? So that's very, very important. And the shield apparently is much slower. It's much smaller, sorry, if you kill all the little things and burn through their shields. And then, of course, he does the Lightning Storm, which you just have to heal through. Right now, as you can see, there was actually almost no shield because we burned through the shield of the small mobs. And obviously, if you pull the mobs on the side and he's summoning some of those little mobs as well, he could actually get a significantly big shield. And if that goes off, you might wipe. But yeah, that's basically another healing check with the Lightning Storm. And now make sure you're at full mana before the last boss, because this is probably one of the most challenging fights in the dungeon pool this season. So, I don't think we played perfectly here, but anyhow, we don't even had Lust, but if you have Lust, you actually want to save it for a little bit later. Now, what you want to do is basically position the boss in between those two pillars over there, and there's a few things going on right now. So, first, those winds. There are weak auras that show you the direction of the winds, so I would suggest you can find one, and that would help you a little bit with positioning, but as you can see, I'm running without one, and most of the time you should be totally fine. Now, apparently we fight two mobs, Stormheart and then the Dragon. So the person, actually right now he did the Storm Slam, which puts a debuff on your tank that you want to dispel as quickly as possible. It's stacking, right? And the tank takes extra damage, so you want to make sure that this is off from him. The next thing that the Dragon does is it actually lands on a person. That's why you actually want to stack close to the tank, to the other mob, so that when the Dragon lands, it's easier to cleave. And the other thing that happens is he does a frontal when he lands, so if you're close to the boss, it will be easier to dodge, and then your melee can actually cleave the two mobs. Once either of them hits 50%, we go into transition phase, which I just paused on the screen right now, and the Dragon is going to land in the far side end of the platform, and the person is just going to mount the Dragon. Now, this is the scariest part of the fight. You want to save all cooldowns for this point. If you have Lust, you want to save it for this point, and shortly you're going to see me popping basically every cooldown that I have available to heal through the incoming damage. So far, the dragon has been targeting a single person and putting a fire debuff on them, which basically chunks them very hard, especially on tyrannical weeks, and after that debuff expires, after that dot expires, you leave a fire patch on the ground that you need to run away from very quickly, because if you stay in it, you get another dot and you're basically dead. Let me note here that when the dragon starts flying, the winds that come, and the weak aura that I told you about that shows you the direction of the winds, are going to start blowing you and the puddles on the ground in a certain direction. So if you know where the next winds are going to be coming from, you can basically position yourself to drop the fire puddles in a place where they'll be basically just blown off the platform, and then you won't have to dodge them on the ground. But let's put that into the advanced strategy of this boss, and even if you drop them in an inconvenient place, it will be just a little bit harder later on to dodge them when there's more of them, obviously. And this part here is scary because when the person mounts the dragon, there's actually 3 debuffs going at the same time. On high tyrannical weeks, they can actually probably take people down to dead, right? They'll kill them if they don't get any heals. So that's why you need to be prepared here and pop all of your CDs, getting ready to heal everybody up, including personal defensives, etc. So here we go. The dragon has landed. I'm pre-spirit linking here, and we got 1 on the tank, 1 on me, and 1 on the DH. Then the dragon is going to land, do the frontal, etc. Right? So we try to drop everything on the side. The tank is still getting the smack from the person, right? So you still have to dispel him, and then we get 3 more, and that basically starts to repeat. As you can see, it's a lot of damage. We're all not positioned very well, right? Because I had people out of range that I couldn't heal. But the whole idea here is you want to burn the dragon as quickly as possible, because after the dragon is dead, it's a free fight, right? I didn't mention the Stormwind, Erkhart Stormwind person does this interrupting Cloudburst, which actually does damage. It's a significant AoE damage, and it will interrupt your casting as well. So watch for that, and keep in mind that he does that cast in the transition phase, right? So when he mounts the dragon, he does that, and then he puts the 3 debuffs on people. So this is actually going to kill a lot of people, especially on Tyrannical Week. It's just a lot of incoming damage that you need to be prepared and you have to deal with. And you also need to somehow count on your teammates to pop personal defensives if they get targeted with a lot of mechanics. Now, here it would probably be better to run Purge. For my talents, as I said, there's few things that you can purge. I didn't in this case, but you can also see the breakdown of my healing. Luckily, actually, yeah, we had 2 melee, so the chain heal is quite valuable in this case. And I would say running Cloudburst in Ruby Life Pools could also be very, very nice, because there's a lot of burst damage, so if you have a little bit of a burst healing to counter that, that would actually be pretty nice. Alright, so that's it for Ruby Life Pools. Hopefully this video is going to help you with your keys and your runs, and I can probably try and do a breakdown of the fights themselves, of the boss fights themselves, to make it a little bit more detailed and point your attention to the important parts of the fights. Alright, so thanks for watching, and if you're interested in this kind of videos, I have more of these for the other dungeons in Season 1 of Dragonflight coming up on my channel, so feel free to subscribe and catch them later on. Cheers and happy healing!